Sean is
Hello.
in Leipzig at the Max Planck Institute. Max Planck, who famously once said, "Only what's measurable is real." And of course, Sean fully subscribes to that hardcore materialistic position. No, he doesn't. Sean is a neuroscientist, an astrophysicist also by training. So it'll be difficult to catch him somewhere, at least in the scientific arena. Sean is teaching a course on the philosophy of the machine, which actually starts this Sunday. And we just wanted to let you know one final time that you can now enroll. And, well, to introduce the course to you with, going over a few thinkers. But Sean will briefly introduce himself and then also briefly introduce the course before we discuss Heidegger and Spengler for a little bit. And if you have any questions for Sean, just let us know in the chat. Sean.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much, Johannes. I'm glad to be here. And as you've correctly said, my background is in physics. I specifically looked into theoretical physics, and currently I'm doing neuroengineering. And specifically, right now, currently, I'm at the Max Planck Institute for Mathematics and the Sciences, where I will be looking at general theories of complex systems. So instead of looking at specific systems, we're looking at the kind of specifics and information theoretical preconditions and presuppositions that you need and look at when modeling systems in general. And the topic of systems will be, among many other topics, one of the lectures in the course on the philosophy of the machine. It will be number 4. But there are 4 others, beginning the first with the science of the machine, where we're going to be looking at the relationship of science and technology. We'll be reading Edmund Husserl there, and optionally Thomas Kuhn. In the second lecture, we'll be talking about the ideology of the machine, looking at how our ideologies are also technologically driven or follow a sort of technological rationality, as Adorno would put it. In that second lecture, we will be reading Gilles Deleuze, a postscript on the societies of control. Very interesting, very important text. The optional reading there is going to be a text by Friedrich Engels. In the third lecture, we'll be looking at Heidegger and Spengler, specifically Spengler. The Man and Technics by Spengler and the Question Concerning Technology, both very complicated but crucial texts here. And I'm assuming we're going to be focusing on that a bit further today. And then the fourth one, as I mentioned already, is going to be on the system of the machine, looking at how our systematization of the world is determined by techniques and what it even means to look at the world systematically and how to go beyond that. And we'll be reading Niklas Luhmann in this. And in the final chapter, the kind of escape from the system is, in my view, the myth. And I personally don't know anyone better to read when it comes to myth than Carl Gustav Jung, the one and only. That is the overview of the course.
Which text are we reading again by Jung?
It's The Undiscovered Self.
Right, I have that. I actually, this is a very, I think it was a nice story. I found that book by Marble Arch. There was a young chap who was homeless with his homeless old friend, and they were selling books. So I found the Undiscovered Self here in English translation.
And it's got a mirror as its cover.
Yes, I think it's published by Routledge. And I paid him £10 for it. So they could get a pint somewhere, a proper pint. Thank you very much, Upcycle Club, for your generous donation here. I think that's the first time that's happened. So you get a badge of honor for the first. I don't know what they're called. These super chats, I think they're called. So thank you very much for that. If anyone has any questions for Sean on the course, just let us know. I'll briefly go over the enrollment page here. That's the link that's in the description that takes you here. It's a platform called Teachable that we've partnered with, where we offer our courses. So you get access to the actually 8. So there's 5 lectures, but there are 8 videos in total because Sean has recorded 3 additional videos for the first 3 lectures. We're going to read Husserl, Heidegger, Spengler, Schilderlös, Carl Jung, Engels, Niklas Luhmann. If you want to take the seminars with us, with Sean is leading the seminars. I will be there, I think, for the first 2, maybe 3 weeks or so. Maybe I'll come back for Jung again. I have to go to a Heidegger conference in between and a few other things, so I won't be able to make it. The first seminar is May the 14th. That's this Sunday. That's where we're reading Husserl on the crisis of the European sciences. Then Heidegger and Spengler. That's what we're going to discuss a little bit today. But there's also the option, as I said, for just self-study, which is here. You just, that's the one you choose. You click here. Group seminars is here. Or if you want to discuss more closely philosophy with Sean, then you should take the 3rd tier. You get 6 hours of preparatories. The seminars are 6 seminars in total, that about 2 hours long each. So 18 hours of seminar. At the final seminar, you get to present your own talk. So we could, you could, use that to, if you're writing on something, something already anyways, then you use that course to improve on your piece and present it publicly, or at least to the group, and get comments. I won't say feedback, because that's cybernetic language, as everybody knows. So, but yeah, you're cordially invited to join us. If you know anyone, it's not too late. Enrollment is open until Sunday afternoon. So now's the time to enroll. We're starting this Sunday. And I'll just go over very briefly Heidegger. The essay that I think is, of course, popularly known is The Question Concerning Technology. The German is Die Frage nach der Technik. Now, this is also so it's actually the question after techniques. So it's asking after something. One could play with it a bit and say perhaps that it's actually asking also for what is it that comes after techniques. But so why do I say techniques? I say techniques rather than technology, because technology has, in the English vernacular, the specific meaning, I think, of, technological tools, be that a hammer or a nuclear reactor. These are tools and machines that we use and that we can see, but that's not what Heidegger's after. And here's another issue with the translation. Heidegger does speak in German of das Wesen der Technik. Yeah, so I'll put this in the chat. Das Wesen der Technik. Now, in terms of correspondence truth, let's say, or correspondence correctness, the correct translation is, of course, the essence of technology. There's nothing wrong with that translation.
The essence of technology, or the technology-ness of technology.
Yeah. So, but when we say Wesen in German is a strange word, because it does have, it is the translation for ousia or for essentia, but it is also taken from the German vernacular. So it isn't something that was invented, as the Latin word essentia was, for toti estin in the Greek, or for ousia, depending on the translation. But we can say in German, for example, anwesen or anwesend sein, to be present. anwesend. You can hear the Wesen. Or abwesend, to be absent. So Heidegger understands and explicitly understands Wesen in a verbal, temporal sense. And this is explicit. So he makes it completely explicit in the essay that he does not mean essence. And to me, it's always striking that the original translators of this essay and of any other text by Heidegger, up until this day, just say essence. So he speaks of Staatswesen as an example, das Wesen des Staates. So not the essence of the state, but the way in which the state forms itself, organizes itself, governs itself, and importantly, comes to pass. There is no absolute timeless essence of technology that could be absolutely powerful or universal. Or actually, another example by him is Hauswesen. So that's the household. No household is forever. So what Heidegger is after is, and what I've come to translate Wesen as in English, is hence, as we're speaking of state and state power and a household, and especially when it comes to the state, we're considering a realm. So instead of the essence of technology, what we're considering, and also when we have the discussion, and next Sunday, actually on the 21st of May, is not the essence of technology. We're not looking at this here and this here and, well, what else is this?
Your glasses.
Well, my glasses, yeah, that's a good question. They would even fall in there, but and the lamp and the computer, etc., and look for the common universal essence as a concept under which that lets everything that is a technological tool be defined as such. No, what we're looking at is the realm, the specific realm that Gestell opens up. Gestell is enframing or positionality, depending on how we think of that. And that is a seemingly exclusive realm, but it is not exclusive. And it has not a counterpart, but there's also always a harbor or a place for what Heidegger calls the Gefühl, which is, I think, what we'll get to in the final lecture and seminar. So that will be, I know, on Jung, but also on building, dwelling, thinking in Heidegger, where Heidegger speaks of the Gefühl, the fourfold, the four regions.
That one's tricky. We'll see if we can get to that part.
Yeah, no, I think it'll come up naturally in the discussion to, as you're going through Jung and myth, you can probably just bring that in. So, and so the way in which we will approach this here is, in terms of the technology of techniques, in terms of Heidegger, is, as I've just laid out, that realm that technology or techniques spans open, in which beings appear only as a standing resource. And I say standing resource, not standing reserve, which is a standard translation. It's important that it's actually a resource, Bestand, waiting to be standing ready to be exploited without interference or resistance. So that is my 2 cents on Heidegger. That is the second lecture. But Sean, who has developed the course and who's written the book on it, will now present Man and Technics. It's interesting, right, that in an earlier translation, or I don't actually know where the translation is from, but that in Spengler, it's Man and Technics, isn't it? It's not Man and Technology.
No, yeah. Well, just one last thing to add to what you just said is also, I would say nowadays it's probably better understood to say that like techniques let beings appear as data, right? That at least that's something that's more intuitively seen right now.
Yeah, information,
which was not the case at Heidegger's time, of course.
No, he already speaks of this, so not data, but information. Yeah, that's coming already.
Yeah, information. It's a tricky one because that's like it's like an indefinable word. It's like the only rigorous definition for it is mathematically a sort of deviation from randomness, right? Is the more the more some sort of configuration of variables deviates from a random distribution, the more information it conveys. That's kind of the information theoretical aspect of it, but there's no like, how do you say, general definition of it.
Yeah.
So with Man and Technics, I think it's almost like Spengler had to like finish some debt he had after writing the Decline of the Occident, because there is I feel, this is now an interpretation on my side, I feel like the view of history that he brings forward is very cyclical in a way, right? You get a sort of a rise of a culture, a civilization, and then a zenith, and at some point a decline, right? And I think that, interestingly enough, the question that was kept open there is, I think, technics. It's the question, ironically, that's why they fit together so well, I think, is the question after technics, because there is something different about technology, I find. You do have regress of technology. You did lose the aqueducts after the Roman civilization perished. You did have a loss of architecture after the old empire of Egypt perished, and the new empire of Egypt never built such a thing again, such buildings such as the pyramids again. However, there is something about techniques that is not as cyclical, as to say, it seems to be more persistent and survive the collapse of multiple cycles. So one civilization may invent the wheel, but the wheel may live on after that civilization perishes. So in a way where like you have kind of these two different views of history, where you have a cyclical view and a linear view, I have the feeling that the overemphasis on the cyclical view maybe pushed Spengler to also consider techniques which seems to exhibit this sort of linear development, right? However, here comes the twist that is unusual for looking at these things, for people writing and talking about techniques. And that twist is that the let's say, flourishing, the extreme flourishing of techniques is seen, though, as a sign of decline with Spengler. So it's not actually seen, as a lot of people like to nowadays, as in progress equals technological progress, right? It is specifically this sort of technologizing and commodifying, like you can specifically speak about capitalism in a way there. This commodifying and technologizing kind of trend that he regards as a decline of culture. It is something, once you are no longer capable of writing great operas, you sell merch for it, right? You try and have that opera be played 100 million times on thousands of different devices, because you no longer have anyone that could write a new beautiful one that would be performed. You know what I mean? This is obviously an exaggeration, but just to make the point clear that I think he conveys. And that goes along as a general view, as a historical view, which I think is, in Spengler's case, the more interesting one. He also speaks of his own kind of philosophical view on techniques, stemming from a view of like a predatory technique. He makes he kind of traces it back to sort of carnivorous animal technique when hunting prey. All of these different things, I would say, are interesting, however, not extremely original. Like, there's a lot of different philosophers of technology that will have their own kind of, I forgot whether it was Weizenbaum or Dessauer, who spoke of or projection of organs, that you have kind of every technology is a kind of a projection outwards of some sort of human faculty. And like Spengler speaks of this predatory instinct, and there's a lot of different ways to characterize and philosophically try and find the kind of, you know, metaphysical origin of technology, which, I mean, is interesting. But I think the real interesting part in Spengler is in the historical, let's say, framing of it, which obviously, as he's a historian and he's known for his historical work, is what I think the most crucial, interesting part here.
Excellent. So I'll just say this again. Thank you, Sean. If there are more questions for Sean, there's one. Let us know now. If you know anyone who is interested, or maybe you are yourself, you should enroll now. The link to enroll is in the description of the video. We're meeting the first time on Sunday, but of course you can also just enroll in the self-study tier. We have quite a few people, amongst them, for some reason, Mark Andresen, who is inside the machine. I don't know whether he saw this live stream or whether he just saw it on Twitter. And but if you're listening, sir, thank you very much for enrolling. We get some email from him. I did offer that if he has any questions that we could respond to that, of course. If so, we've got a few more questions now. We'll get to those in a second. Maybe I'll just show you once more briefly the beautiful landing page, which is here. That's where the link takes you, and you can then enroll in the seminars or in the self-study tier, or if you actually do want to speak with Sean 6 times privately over Zoom, or if you're in Leipzig, you can meet with him and drink a coffee, perhaps. Then that's for you. Usually most people enroll here. I think we're about 10, 11 people in the seminars, plus Sean and me. So I'll be there a couple of times, but Sean is the teacher and Sean leads the seminars also. Here's from Upcycle Club, just briefly, I think a comment that Heidegger calls technology the objectification of nature. Just in general, I don't recall. So Heidegger does sometimes speak of the objectification, Objektivierung der Natur, but Heidegger would actually say that already the notion of nature is itself already an objectification. Hence the turn back to physis as that which self rises out of itself. And in the countryside conversation, and in general, in any dialogues that Heidegger publishes, one has to be careful who says it, right? Is it der Gelehrte? Is it der Forscher? Is it der Weise? It's not always Heidegger who speaks. So der Gelehrte is not Heidegger. Der Forscher is not Heidegger. Der Weise, the wise one, would be Heidegger in that dialogue, in those countryside conversations or maybe dialogues. There's also another very good one, which is between Heidegger and a Japanese scholar, which is published in On the Way to Language, that I would also highly recommend. So we've got a few questions. I'll read them out. Is there no Lumanian helmsman behind technics? Marco, by the way, thank you for enrolling.
That's an interesting question. I'm not exactly sure what is meant by that. Is that Lumanian helmsman behind technics? You've got to get creative now what that could mean.
Well, I think if Marco is still here, he can clarify.
I mean, Luhmann is known for his theory on social systems. We're going to be reading him as well.
Yeah.
Don't know, what would a Luhmannian helmsman do if he's behind technics?
We'll find out.
Maybe use social systems theory to increase control and feedback on humans, sort of.
Well, that would make sense given where he came from. I mean, politically. And so, yeah, Marco says cybernetics. Sorry.
Yeah, more or less what I said, right? Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Marco, for enrolling and for your question. Okay, this is something for you, Sean. Is there any kind of parallels to be drawn between the philosophical notion of virtuality as elaborated by Deleuze with techniques?
Well, I mean, I'm not very familiar with Deleuze's notion of virtuality. It is something that I suppose where the ideal and the real collapses in a way. Like if it's something ideal but yet real because everything becomes kind of immanent in Deleuze. I mean, Deleuze has his own kind of theory and explanation of techniques, which we've talked about, and the virtuality is an aspect that is, especially in his system of desiring production, the virtuality plays a key role in producing desires. Right? You have to virtually construct whatever then becomes a real desire. That's nothing else what you can see in modern day advertising.
Very good. Did you see another remark somewhere that you wanted to get to?
Another question?
Yeah, I mean, there's another one by Damon's.
Over-flourishing of techniques could be defined as that which is unsustainable. Yes, I mean, to an extent, I'd say that a lot of it is I don't want to say something that you strongly disagree with, Johannes, but I would say that there is, with a lot of the German thinkers of that era, a sort of romanticism towards nature, even though you just criticized this notion of nature. There was often a critique of the modern world, of technology, of industry, and a sort of romanticism towards, the natural, the nature, the more intuitive, less rationalized world.
Well, well, yeah, well, I don't know if it's but I don't even know if that's where the question was going, but I'm not sure whether it's a romanticization of nature. Nature itself, you could almost say, is also not a complete construct, but I mean, in Kant, nature specifically means natural laws, and it is a certain regularity to it that is mechanical almost, right? So, but Heidegger, specifically Heidegger, does not romanticize anything, nor does Hegel. No one, I mean, I wouldn't even know who really does romanticize nature. There's obviously what's at stake is something else. What's at stake is that, and we now see this with the PR around a search engine that's pretty bad, all things considered, called ChatGPT, is that what really is at stake is that attacks on what it is to be human. That's what is at stake. And by the way, I don't know what the notion here of unsustainable means. Anything that we now consider sustainability is purely technical. The technical understanding of saving the planet. These are completely technical interpretations.
Yeah, what I would assume it could mean one of two things. It could mean unsustainable in the sense of, how do you say, bad for the environment, and that, let's say, the natural environment, quote unquote, that which enables us to, which is the basis for our existence in the first place, which is being eroded, like cutting off the branch you're sitting on. And also just in general terms, that it's not something you can keep going with for forever, that you can keep going with for a long time. And yes, I mean, in both cases, it's kind of accurate, the description. What I was just saying, that like it was, as far as I'm concerned, especially strongly pronounced in Germany to preserve, like try and preserve forests, try and preserve animals that were native to the land and these kind of things. for its own sake, in a way. And I'd say that still is something that is,
but that's not
pronounced in
romanticism.
Germany.
You know, that's not that's not romanticism. That's not even peculiar to Germany. It's the same in England. That's the natural way of what it means to be human, is also to see yourself as stewards of nature. So that's not a fetishization of something that wasn't there before.
I wasn't being critical when I said that.
No, I know, but this is the language suggests that it's peculiar to one region, and it's sort of just a reactionary response to the industrialization, etc. It's I don't. So, for example, when you have someone like Hegel is very much aware what nature is. Nature to him is, he doesn't say it's a slaughter bench, that's history, but it is almost Hobbesian, right? A war of all against all. So there is no romanticization of the natural, but there is an understanding in Hegel, for example, that the human being cannot fully negate or absolutely negate nature. So you have to negate nature, simply put, to become free, but you have to negate that negation also. And in the ongoing revolution that we're in, we are about to negate nature to such an extent that that, you know, in the name of health and in the name of being good and in the name of the law, the question is, at what point will the human being just be a product?
Would you agree though with the notion that, especially around that time, if you think of German writers, that a lot of them would, like Heidegger spent a lot of time on the countryside in the mountains, so that Jung, and not only did they spend a lot of time there, but they also made it clear that that was influential for them. And if you think of thinkers that were prominent in Britain at that time, I feel like that didn't have such a central position. I feel like you don't hear Bertrand Russell talking about how he learned his philosophy from the forest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but what did Bertrand Russell ever write? You know, I mean, one of the books that he writes is, or an essay, is In Praise of Idleness, in which he describes the need to have full automation, so that once we have full automation, as any good Fabian would have it, only then can we enjoy some idleness again. So it's a completely different, but people take walks in the countryside. Heidegger lived in Freiburg. I don't know where this misconception comes from that he lived in a hut. He never lived there. Never.
But he spent time there where he wrote.
He spent time there, yeah, and then he lived in Freiburg. You spend time somewhere else. You go to Norway and jump in a frozen lake. I can say this because you made it public.
Yeah, that's fine. So you would say that there is no
resistance, right?
So you'd say there's no specific emphasis of like nature in the sense of non-touched, scenery, this kind of poetic view of learning from the forests, the woods, the mountains. That is not more pronounced necessarily now in German thinkers around that age, which elicited them to be more critical of modernity than thinkers in Britain were.
Yeah, but okay, that may be so, but there are just as many examples of German thinkers who are not like that. Josef Pieper, for example, comes to mind. Sigmund Freud, who was Austrian and moved to London, he didn't care one bit for nature, but the stewardship or the understanding of Roger Scruton, for example, comes to mind, who wrote on this recently and all his life, basically. And then the understanding of what it means to be English specifically is to be a guest in the land and to care for the land of ancestry for those who come next. Which is why, by the way, English parks are a lot less soulless than, say, a French absolutist park, if you even want to call that still a park.
That's because they lock them at night. The English lock their parks at night.
No, it's not because they're locked at night. No, I mean, there's a stark difference between geometrical, just the sharp geometry of the parks around Versailles, for example, and even the park outside of Buckingham Palace, which is St. James's Park, that if the city completely disappears, not during fall or winter because the leaves are gone, but the way it has been laid out, it's a working with nature rather than against it. But yeah, so obviously there is Heidegger and Nietzsche perhaps also, and a few others go. Hegel doesn't. I mean, Hegel was a complete urbanite, we would say today.
Right.
So was Kant, and again Heidegger too. I mean, Heidegger lived.
Kant was the ultimate urbanite.
Well, yeah, he never even left the
place. Kant is the ultimate urbanite. He just sat at home and looked at pictures from far away on Instagram.
So, yeah. But yeah, obviously, so I don't disagree, but we cannot, when we speak about Heidegger specifically, I think we need to go to the thought and not so much about what someone really did, because then we get all kinds of ideas, but he contradicted himself because he had his heart electrified at some point. Okay. What's more important is that he sees already the word nature as a construction of modernity.
Right.
So for Heidegger, we need to get back to physis and be able to think physis as that which self rises out of itself, or even more radically with Heraclitus, physis cryptis dai philae. Physis is that which hides itself in something other. And hence can never be measured, to come back to Max Planck, and is completely inexhaustible for that very gifting out of itself. And that's a completely radically different way of thinking. And so that's, I think, is more crucial. So where does he go? He actually goes to the text. That's what I would say where he's going. So let's have a few more questions. But Upcycle Club. I don't know who you are. Maybe you have enrolled, but if you haven't, then you need to do so now. Marco, I know, has Demons. You need to enroll. So let's see. More recently with Andreas Weber and Enlivenment. I don't know what this is. Sustainability as in jeopardizing the future conditions. Yes, Heidegger was in the Woodcraft folk. No. Okay, I mean, Heidegger's done. But do you want to say anything on this?
I don't know if it's necessarily a question or if he's just affirming things.
Okay. I have another question to both of you that is not related to the upcoming course and to me. I don't know the book.
Neither. I'm not familiar with Gaston Bachelard. I wish I had more of this encyclopedic knowledge that some people have.
I wish I had less of it. To technically legislate a forest for protection, would that not be, as Junger mentioned, to treat it as a museum, planning things for use and preservation? You can respond to that.
I mean, that's of course a great point. That's very true. I think Baudrillard touches about something like that when talking about ethnology and traditional cultures. It is this. Yeah, it is true. It is the sense that you're like kind of preserving something, but then it is constructed, like you said with the word nature. You kind of you have in your head an idea of what nature should be, and then you make the forest be that way, and then preserve it to stay that way. And I think that is also not exactly what, would be understood under like proper Gelassenheit, of proper like releasement. And I think that's an interesting buzzword here, because it's like because it kind of opposes progress. It opposes this progressivism without reacting into regression, which is common. You're against progress, and then you take the counter position, become regressive or become reactionary, right? And I think the important thing in Gelassenheit, in letting things be, is to let them be in their own speed and not progress them or regress them, right? And I think that is something that you can't really learn as an urbanite. I think that is something that you have to learn from quote unquote nature, right? That is something that, because no one can make the tree, no one makes the tree out in the forest hurry up and accelerate or regress or whatever, unless it is technically grown for something that needs to hurry up, that needs to be done in a certain time, right? So like left to its own device, everything has its own rhythm, its own speed. And I think that's, Jung is also said to have spent a lot of time on his boat smoking a pipe.
Yeah.
And just watching the river,
But so it's, the issue is not working with, let's just use this language to make it easy. The issue is not working with nature. Why would it be, oh, this is man-made because you planted a tree? No, that's not man-made. Planting a tree, planting a forest is not, or caring for a forest is not to make the forest. When we produce the forest, however, as Forstbestand, as the German vernacular says, so as a mere resource that is to stand ready for the production of, let's say, to produce paper, some further down the line, in the production, then that's, of course, that's something different. But that we have to make a distinction here. And we also, I think, to give an example from England, I think all across the country now, it's some councils or have decided to plant trees by using Excel sheets. So they start, just filling up, we need these amounts of trees to get to carbon net zero. These trees, which don't grow in England at all, not even in the north, they absorb CO2 really well. So we need to plant them here, 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 and here. So you get foreign trees being planted. Now that's purely Gestell. Right, so in the name of reducing CO2, there I would say we have to make another clear distinction. That's no longer working with the specific physis of a place. That which there grows by itself and it can be supported. By the way, this is one understanding of Techne. Techne supports or can support that which comes to the fore in physis. There's nothing wrong with that. Why would that be wrong? But it begins to be it begins to be something else entirely when we do what I just pointed out as an example. When we just look at an abstract calculation, we need to get to net zero. Why? Because, and hence we need to plant these trees, maybe eucalyptus trees or something, because they grow fast, or ginkgo. Goethe loved ginkgo trees, by the way. Whatever these trees are, but they're not of the land. They're probably, not good for the soil or for the fauna, for the animals and the birds, etc. But it doesn't matter because they reduce CO2. That's completely within Gestell. And that doesn't take anything else into consideration. And this is something we will get into. So there's the question that we won't answer, which is on HEI and Vervaeke. We're not here to discuss any, but if you have these questions, you should sign up. Then you can discuss that with Sean more directly. Upcycle Club is considering to enroll. Well, it is time, kids.
You've got a fan. See the newest comment. Johannes is my favorite philosopher on YouTube.
Well, that's very kind of you. Why don't I show this? This has never happened. So thank you very much. Look, I mean, if so, any specific questions, for Sean, I mean, you can. Sean has a YouTube channel, by the way, which is Deep Noetics. I put a link in the chat also. So he's very responsive. That's Sean's YouTube.
That's the advantage of small channels. I can reply to all the comments.
Yeah, I try to reply to as many as I can, basically.
I even replied to the trolls.
Yeah, I used to do that in the beginning too. Not anymore. I just delete them and block. But trolls have their place in life. They can be important to point something out to you sometimes. This is where you're a bit nutty. So yeah, if so, people are considering it. That's good. I hope that you can make it. Susan, who's here, Susan has enrolled in the seminar, so we'll look forward to having Susan back. Actually, the first course that Susan took was on technology on Heidegger, now more than a year ago, 1.5 years ago now. Communities with actively participating citizens tend to reflect a more human element. Yeah, they also tend to care better for their surroundings. Sean, any closing remarks?
No, I would say I'm wishlessly happy, but I'll be happier if I see all of you in the course on Sunday, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really excited for it, and I think it's going to be a great learning experience for all of us. I think for me as well. I'm really looking forward to discussing these things with a group of people, because you don't really get to do that a lot in daily life.
Exactly.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. Yeah, Sean, it's good that the algorithm brought us together.
Or my friend Dominic, yeah.
Well, okay. Oh, it wasn't the algorithm then. Okay, it was a real human being. That's disappointing. So let's see. This is the link to enroll. Yeah. No, sorry. This is the This is the website where you enroll. The link to enroll is in the description, and it's also here. So if you are considering, go over there now and join us on Sunday. Sean will be there. I will be there. We're discussing a bit of Husserl. Then we're going to Heidegger and Spengler, and then Deleuze, and followed by Luhmann, and we end strong on Carl Gustav Jung. That's with the group seminars. Self-study. Now you get 5 lectures, but there are 8 videos in total. Of course, everyone has access to the same stuff. 6 group seminars here. Or if you really want to get deep into the machine, and as you can hear, Sean is a great conversationalist and thinker, and you're working on something already anyways, maybe you'd like to discuss it with him, because I know there's someone in the audience here who is working on a novel. I won't name his name, but he's here, and I'm looking forward, by the way, to reading it when you're sending it to me in summer. So I won't mention the name because I don't know whether you'd like this public or not. So if this is something, where you think you need more help or guidance, etc., that's for you. So head over to the enrollment page now. We see you on Sunday. Yeah. There's someone here says, these videos are great prepping for tackling such difficult works before seminar. Thank you. That sounds like you've enrolled. So I don't know who you are, but we'll find out on Sunday. Everybody else is Dali, keep well. Yes, you keep well as well. I have no thoughts on Hermeticism, by the way.
Where is that set?
Somewhere.
Was that a question somewhere?
Somewhere further up. Heidegger is beginning to warm on me, says Susan, once you get beyond the difficult terminology. Here's the thing. The terminology is ultimately not that difficult in the German. It's in English, the translations are often not very good. So we are going to address that also a little bit, at least in the first hour, because the main focus will still be Spengler.
I have to disagree to an extent. I have to say the terminology is difficult in German as well. However, there is a moment where you kind of click in how you're supposed to read them, and then it becomes easy.
Well,
the words themselves are not
click.
difficult.
You're not a bloody robot. You don't click. Yeah, I know that's a very German way of saying it, right? You click and then es macht click. But yeah, okay, I agree to a certain degree. But Heidegger is just very, very precise. I've just finished writing a piece on Sprache, on language, which I'll present at a conference in a couple of weeks. And that essay is just, you cannot translate that into English. It's impossible. One would have to write something in English that works from within the English vernacular and tries to say the same without just translating. And the issue is, and this, by the way, this is pure Gestalt, this is pure techniques. Heidegger's Gesamtausgabe, the collected works, should have been, they should have been completed about, I guess at this point, 5, 6, 7 years ago. But they keep publishing more in German. And every new publication now is almost immediately being translated into English. But the way in which the translations work is that they are word-to-word translations. So they look at the sentence, they translate the sentence, and they have their dictionary of accepted translations for Heidegger. And that's how, of course, Gestell would operate. And this is how it has to operate, because it has to churn out content as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Whereas instead, a genuine translation would have to try to say what Heidegger says, but no longer what Heidegger says to a German hearing audience, but to an English hearing audience or to a French audience. Heidegger obviously was very open to other languages. He speaks of the word thing in English quite often. In his later years, he thought that French offered something that the German couldn't offer when it came to the thought of Ereignis. So it's not that it's purely German and only German is the language, as he supposedly once said. But there is a similarity between the Greek and the German, by the way, because that question just came up. The similarity is the prefixes and the suffixes. The prefixes of the German language and the spatio-temporality of the verbs, the reflexivity which the English lacks, for example. That is, I think, one of the similarities. So I'll leave it at that. Blah, 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 blah. I can go on forever. I'll see you all on Sunday. The link to enroll, again, is this one. Sean will welcome you. We're reading Husserl for this Sunday. And I'll show you once more the beautiful landing page. This is what it looks like. The crying girl who has become machine. All right. So, see you all on Sunday. Good night. Bye.